A near-death experience along the shores of Lake Michigan in Indiana. Tonight we're asking if it could happen here.
A 6-year-old boy was buried underneath the sand for hours Friday after a dune suddenly collapsed. Doctors are working to get the sand now out of the boy's lungs, but he's doing remarkably well.
When they picked him up, he has a cut on his face and it started to bleed. And they said, he's got a heartbeat.
Tonight, Danny Carlson asked a dune expert about what could cause this and if it could happen here.
Well, the short answer is this is very rare, very unlikely to happen again, our dune expert said. But Professor Alan Arbogast, he's the head of the geography department at MSU. He's been studying dunes for decades, and he says he's still trying to figure out how the boy was swallowed and how he survived.
That's one of the craziest stories that I've ever heard with respect to sand dunes.
For most people, that might not mean very much, but Arbogast has studied dunes for more than 2 decades. That means he's heard and told a lot of dune stories.
I kind of struggle with ways in my mind of coming up with a scenario where that would happen.
The reason for his confusion is because sand dunes, by definition, are solid masses of sand. No gaps, no sinkholes.
The idea of an air pocket at depth, I just don't see how that could happen. Apparently it did, but it doesn't, it sort of defies logic because the way sand flows like water, and it naturally fills all voids. And so he's one lucky kid, I'll tell you that.
The sand from bare dunes does move. Those are the ones that you see at the lakeshore, the dunes that aren't held in place by trees and grass like this one on MSU's campus. But that sand only moves from one of 2 things, wind or gravity. This sort of thing is practically unheard of. Arbogast says the average person has a much greater chance of getting attacked by a shark than swallowed by a sand dune.
I don't think people walking around on the dunes along Lake Michigan should be afraid that this is going to happen to them.
So it is rare, but I asked if there was any way to tell if you do come upon some kind of hole like this one. Arbogast said there's really no way to tell from the surface if there's anything underneath. But again, the odds are that there isn't.
And we're glad to hear that it's rare. I mean,
Yeah.
he seemed just as baffled by this whole thing as we
He said it
all
was
are.
unheard of.
Yeah, and he was really just trying to figure it out. You heard him say, sand is just like water. It flows just like water and covers up every gap. So the fact that there was a hole and then there was enough of a gap for him to breathe, just amazing.
Unbelievable story.